Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be talking with a barrister in UK, Michael Pollack, and we'll be talking about the current project within the Magnitsky law. It's not Magnitsky law in England, but how possible to achieve something via that. Michael, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure actually. I know you're in an airport, you're waiting for a transit and hope you travel safe. But can we start with this? Would you like to introduce yourself? I know you are going to be one of the barristers who is handling the project in UK to hold, let's say, human rights abusers in Turkey accountable in UK within the UK recent law, which is similar to Magnitsky law of the United States. But let us begin with knowing you a bit more. Can you tell us about yourself a bit?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a barrister in London. I practice in criminal law. I practice in international law. I practice in human rights law. I also run an organization called Justice Abroad, which helps mostly British people who get in trouble overseas with foreign legal systems, but also carries out human rights work. So we have clients all around the world. We represent a number of Uyghur families who live in Europe who've had family members disappeared in China as well. So that's another thing I do. I run Lawyers for Uyghur Rights, a lawyers organization as well. So this kind of case is exactly the type of work that I'm interested in, helping other lawyers, we hope, and really standing up for the most terrible human rights abuses.
I see. So in a way, you already mentioned that you are representing some Uyghur families and their case. Is it a representation on the basis of the same law and procedure?
In regards to the work I do with the Uyghur people, I do lots of work through Justice Abroad for families, and we make applications to United Nations bodies in regards to their family members who've been arbitrarily detained or disappeared. We speak to the press and we try to get press coverage of those cases, which is very important, and in some cases can have a positive outcome in regards to their release. The problem in the Xinjiang area is obviously a very widespread problem, a huge scale there of people who've just been disappeared and forced into these camps. I also do lots of work with the World Uyghur Congress, and that's looking at more formal ways of raising the issue with the international institutions and using any forum we can to try to stop the crimes against humanity and possibly genocide which is taking place there. One kind of example of things we've been doing is the International Olympic Commission has an ethics commission, which is supposed to be independent from the International Olympic Committee's management. So we've made a complaint there in regards to holding the Olympics in Beijing in 2022, whilst genocide and crimes against humanity are taking place, and whilst Uyghur slavery is being used or will be used to make the garments and technology which we use for the Olympics. And we're saying that's in breach of the Olympic Charter. And we've been pushing the Ethics Commission, which is supposed to be independent, to respond to that. So that's just one example of the type of proceedings we use to try to raise human rights abuses in China.
Okay, it's good to know that we're talking to someone who is actually familiar and experienced in this very recent law. I will still mention it as Magnitsky law because my listeners are more familiar with that term. But can we talk a little bit about the UK law on this issue, the one that is amended to be look like the Magnitsky? What is it and what it entails and what is the difference with the Magnitsky law in comparison to UK law?
The UK's version of the Magnitsky law, which seems to be coming into place all around the world, which is fantastic, is the Global Human Rights Sanctions Regulations of this year. So it's a very recent piece of legislation in regards to sanctioning those who are involved in the worst type of human rights abuses. And what the Global Human Rights Sanctions focus on is individuals who carry out the following activities on behalf of a state those which amount to a serious violation of the right to life, the right not to be subject to torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, and the right to be free from slavery. So that's the real focus of the regulations. And they prevent those individuals from traveling into the United Kingdom, and also it goes to seizing their assets, any assets they hold in the jurisdiction. And although it's only been brought into law very recently this year, it has been used on a number of occasions. Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, and a number of his family members have been added to the sanctions lists. Some Russian operatives who were involved in the poisoning in the United Kingdom last year have been added to the list. So people have already been added to that list. And it's a great piece of legislation to show individuals around the world that they won't have impunity for these kind of activities.
Now then, it brings us to the other question. Many of my listeners have questions about whether this is really deterrent, because let's say to be on a list, on a blacklist in America or in UK or in Canada, now the number is growing. I know European Union is doing something similar as well, but how deterrent really it is? I mean, people may just stay in their countries, and why should they even bother to be on that list? Hence why this campaign should be any deterrent to the crimes they commit.
We found, and I think if you look throughout history, people very rarely like to be called out on their actions. And although people in the United Kingdom might know some kind of basic information about what's going on in Turkey, and no one really knows how that's orchestrated by particular individuals, whether they're prosecutors who are sending people to prison for no reason, or local people in local government who are doing the same and sanctioning torture. People in the United Kingdom and across the West probably don't know the names of those people. So for individuals to be named, we think does have a deterrent effect. Individuals, even people carrying out terrible human rights abuses, very rarely like to be called out and for their name to be published. So that's one part of the deterrent. Second to that is the world is more and more connected. So individuals in Turkey are likely, especially if they're high-ranking individuals with business interests, to want to do business outside of Turkey. And if the UK has a sanction regime and the United Kingdom's been cooperating with countries in the Commonwealth in regards to imposing sanctions on the same people, the Lukashenko sanctions were done in tandem with Canada. So if that spreads across the Commonwealth against individuals and to America, it really does close and stop the ability of people to do business, because to do that kind of business, individuals are going to want to have international bank accounts. That's just one example. There might be some people who aren't involved in business at all, but we think putting people on those lists does have a deterrent effect, and it really calls on the government to answer for what they're doing. It says this is taking place. We've considered it. The evidence is clear that this kind of behavior, torture, and inhuman and degrading treatment is taking place on a wide scale. So I think it does have an effect on individuals around the world. That's not to say it's the only thing that we should be doing. There are other ways to look into stopping impunity for international crimes. And as I mentioned, we consider all those different, as human rights lawyers, all those different ways of targeting impunity. So it's one kind of piece in the armory, but I do think it does have an effect in calling out and holding to account those people who are responsible.
I see. So let's come to the project itself, the one that initiated with Arrested Lawyers Initiative, which you will be doing the work for. And then what is your initial thought about the project? How does it look in terms of campaigning, in terms of prospects, in terms of probably some success that might be in the way? How do you perceive it so far?
When Arrested Lawyers came to me and Kevin Dent, Queen's Counsel, who's leading me in this project, we were very excited about it, because it's a fantastic organization to start with. I've been following their work for a while. If you go to their website, they really do document what's going on in Turkey, and they have very good connections with different bar associations across Europe and around the world. And they came to us and said, is this something that you might be able to help with? And we looked at it and said, yeah, this is something which does have very good prospects because of the widespread scale of the abuses in Turkey. So we were very excited when they came to us with this project. And what we'll be doing in the project is considering evidence against individuals on different levels. So it might be local government level, where there's sanctioning of torture, or it could be prosecutors in Turkey. As we know, they have an immense amount of power to decide who goes to prison and for how long, even when there's no evidence of any crimes being committed. We've heard of cases where people have been sent to prison for years and years, and when they go to leave the prison, they're sent back into prison again, just on the whim of the prosecutor. So we'll be looking at prosecutors on that level as well. We'll be looking at a wide range of different positions. But there's the good thing about this project, the good thing about dealing, we're focusing on crimes against lawyers, but we're not stopping there. We're looking at crimes against journalists and against civil society activists as well. The good thing about lawyers is that they speak up about what happens to them. So there's lots of transcripts you can get from the Turkish courts where lawyers have been brought into court, and before the judge they said, this is what happened to me, this is who did it to me, this is when it happened. And in lots of these international human rights cases, you don't have evidence like that, because the people who are being attacked or tortured don't have the ability, and they're too scared sometimes to bring it up. But in Turkey's situation, you do have lawyers who are actually speaking up and documenting what's happening. So the evidence is quite good compared to other human rights situations around the world.
I see. So that looks promising. Now that brings us to other question. Roughly, public campaign started within 2 weeks, and it's already reached half of its goalpost. It's over 20,000, 22,000 last time I checked. So that's, as far as I know, that puts in motion some of the work will be done, start being, commencing now as it reached a goalpost, and it will continue campaigning as well. So what does this mean for you? Like, what are you going to be doing next couple of weeks about the campaign?
The next few weeks, we'll be considering the evidence that has been collected by arrested lawyers in regards to individuals who've been involved in mass human rights violations in Turkey. And we'll be putting together, starting to put together the submissions which we will send to the foreign minister, foreign secretary in the United Kingdom, because he's the one who makes the decision under the sanctions regulations. So we'll be putting together that information. And as I said, there is very good evidence that I've seen already, but we'll be putting that into a form which makes it easy to understand. So we have the best chance of those sanctions being granted against those individuals. And once we've made the submissions in regards to sanctioning individuals, there's a lot of other work we can look at as well. There's obviously sanctioning in different parts of the world, so not just the United Kingdom. You mentioned the European Union as well, which is starting to use sanctions more effectively now as well. And there are also other possible legal proceedings that we can have a bit of a look at as well, because we think the problem needs a very broad response. But the first step is looking at the UK sanction regime, which has been brought into law recently.
Okay, then it ultimately brings the question: the Conservative Party is in power since the coup attempt, and all these massive human rights violations have started. And what I observe is the Conservative Party has been very lenient on Erdogan regime at the moment. In a way, one can argue even supportive, despite the fact that Parliament report about the coup attempt and other development in Turkey, or in other human rights organizations like Amnesty International in the UK mainly have a lot of concerns. But it seems like you will have a difficult task to convince the foreign minister of Conservative Party to take action on this. How do you see that dilemma or the problem to
We think if we collect proper evidence, make proper submissions in regards to individuals who are responsible, we think we've got a good chance of getting at least some of them added to that sanctions list. In international politics, as you know, relationships between countries change so rapidly. And I remember 10 years ago, I was working on cases involving Russia and the United Kingdom, and the British government didn't want to do anything to upset Russia because there was a very close relationship at that time. And now there's the sanction list is full of Russian names. So I don't think it will be much that the UK's government's position on Turkey will be much of an impediment. As you know, the politics in regards to Turkey and its relationship with other countries in Europe are changing very, very quickly. So I'm not too worried about that. We think if we put the evidence before the Foreign Secretary, at least some of the names on our list will be added to the sanction regime.
To begin with, yeah, that's good. But so that brings us to other question, because this is not 100% a judicial procedure. It's not a court case. It is a case that will be submitted to Foreign Office, which means it's a political case, and there'll be some sort of a campaigning needs to be done. What can concern people in the UK mainly how can they support this campaign? You know, like apart from, of course, donations and raising awareness on social media, what else they can do?
You're right there. It's a kind of cross political legal process in regards to what we're doing, and the political pressure and raising awareness of what's going on is very important. We've reached out already to the inter-party parliamentary group on Turkey, and we hope to run some events with them to speak about what's happening. But Turkish people in the United Kingdom can raise it with their local MPs and councillors as well. That's very important, because the more political support we have from all parties, the better that is. So Turkish community leaders in the United Kingdom and individuals should use the opportunity they can hold events, they can speak to their MP, they can write to the newspaper, they can keep on raising the issue. So I think it's very important that people in the United Kingdom understand that the people who are suffering here are the Turkish people, and the Turkish people do not all agree with what's happening in Turkey. And it's sometimes, if you read the newspaper, you don't get those voices of Turkish people outside of Turkey speaking about what's happened to themselves, to their families, to their profession, whether they're lawyers or journalists. So I think it's very important to hear the Turkish voices coming forward, especially Turkish people who are in countries like the United Kingdom or across Europe, who are relatively safe to say those things. You can speak on behalf of those people back at home in Turkey who are unable to do so.
So are we talking about the, let's say, long-term residents in here who are already citizens, or are we, can anyone who recently arrived as an asylum seeker or become a refugee because of what's going on in Turkey, can they do anything to contribute?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because in a way they are the subject of this story as well, you know, like partly.
No, they are the best evidence about what's happening. So if they want to get in touch with us and provide evidence about what's happened to them, we will definitely consider that. But if they work within their local, with the Turkish communities in the United Kingdom, that's also very, very helpful. And it's important that members of parliament, especially those who, with constituencies with a large Turkish diaspora, understand that the Turkish people who've escaped and who've come to the United Kingdom for those reasons don't support what's happening there and want a stronger stand and a stronger voice about what's going on. That's very important. Whichever political party they're from, that they understand that their Turkish constituents, who will be, who some of whom will be voting for them, don't agree with what's happening in Turkey and want them to speak up about it.
I see. So it might be multiple approaches they can do. So I think that is for at this stage. That seems like almost everything will be in conversation. Will be continue this dialogue and see how it goes in the following weeks. But overall, do you see? Can you say whether it's a good start or not? Overall, the campaign and the way it was responded. How does it make you feel?
The way that the Turkish community around the world responded to the campaign was very inspiring. There were people donating, some people large amounts, some people small amounts, but there were so many people getting involved and sending messages of support. And to know that people who may not be in a very fantastic position in regard financially, if they've escaped from Turkey, were willing to contribute and to give us support, was very heartening. and it shows, I think, how strongly people feel about this, about what's happening to them. And these are people who've come from great jobs back in Turkey and are unable to work in those areas. So they feel very strongly about that. So it's heartening to receive all the messages. Lots of messages have come through, and we really thank them for their support. And hopefully we can work towards combating this impunity of all these individuals in Turkey who think they can get away with causing so much damage to their fellow countrymen. So we will continue to fight for that, and we thank everyone for their support.
Thank you very much, Michael, for sparing some time with us, and hopefully we'll be in touch again about this.
Thank you.
Is there any last remarks that you want to do, or I'll conclude the program? Okay, thank you very much. We had Michael Pollack as a guest in our interview. He has talked about the ongoing campaign about holding responsible the people who are causing all these human rights abuses in Turkey. And we also talked a little about what we can do. I will provide all the links below so you can link and support or see how things are going. And I'll also put Michael's Twitter feed on the link so you can actually follow him and see more closely, because he's one of the 2 barristers who will be following these cases, and we'll be having regular conversations. For the next conversation, if you have any questions needs to be answered, please write that down below in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.